I know I don't need to elaborate on what an ADHD project graveyard is if you've clicked on this video, because I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm going to tell you about one particular thing in my project graveyard that completely transformed and illustrates my transformation in how I relate to the idea of not finishing things. And it involves a limbless Michael Jordan.
Doo-doo boop boop boo. ADHD adventures in being human. Let's see what's in store. And if you likey, why not do a subscribey?
In 2020, my sister watched the documentary The Last Dance about Michael Jordan, and she became obsessed with him. She was so enamored by his focus, determination, and the way that he managed to harness motivation and be really driven. And motivation is a topic that me and her had been talking about for years. Hello, undiagnosed ADHD. We used to try and figure out how we could harness it, how we could create it, and, like many of you I'm sure, how we could find it again once it had seemingly just disappeared. So of course, I did what anybody would do in that situation, and I decided that the only logical conclusion would be to cross-stitch her a very large image of Michael Jordan so she could put it up in her house and use it as a source of inspiration. I worked on it intensely with all the enthusiasm of a new project, did maybe like a fifth or sixth of it, and then it sat in my project graveyard for the next 4 years. I would think about it every now and then, a voice of shame creeping in, you know how it goes. Why do you never finish anything? Why bother starting stuff if you're not going to finish it? What a waste, what a failure. But over those 4 years, I'd done a lot of work on reframing that for myself, and this is an example of where that really came to pay off, and I'll explain more about that later in the video. First, let's talk about that struggle. If you're somebody with ADHD, I know that you have a project graveyard of unfinished projects. Whether it's crafts projects that you've not finished, art supplies that you haven't opened, abandoned side hustles, courses that you've started and never finished. There's a bunch of stuff there just hanging around, haunting you. And every time you think about it, you get filled with that sense of shame and just pure bad feeling. But what that does is it means that there's this additional wall and horribleness to get over to even look at the stuff again or think about finishing it. And for lots of us, an even worse consequence of that is we stop starting stuff. We stop following the things that excite us because we're already anticipating the shame we'll feel when we inevitably quit. And here's why this happens. ADHD brains are wired for interest and they're wired for novelty. That is what sparks that motivation. And so while at the beginning you might be fueled with this almost superhuman ability to get things done, when that novelty tails off, or often when things become more routine or require more executive functioning, like planning, following multiple steps, learning something new, it can be harder for us to overcome those things to keep continuing with the project. This is not a character flaw. It is how your nervous system is wired. It is how your brain neurons connect to get you motivated and paying attention. But we've ended up feeling like quitting things is the same as failure, and it's not. I feel very strongly about this. I feel like this is my life's work. So let's talk about what actually works instead. And this cross-stitch project really made me realize something. Just because the thing that you started doesn't end up looking like what you thought it would look like, doesn't mean it hasn't achieved or fulfilled the purpose that you intended it to achieve, especially when it comes to creative work. After 4 years of this cross-stitch sitting in my project graveyard, I was coming to my sister's birthday at the end of last year, November 2024, and I was like, maybe I should gift this to her for her birthday, right? And I figured I had 3 choices. I could look at it, decide that it had defeated me, and throw it away, that I felt like that was a waste. I could put in place a bunch of strategies like body doubling, routine, essentially do all of that hard energy work to convince myself to finish it. But in all honesty, I decided there are better things that I could do with my time right then than doing that. Or thirdly, I could gift it to her as it is, unfinished. And I think this is a crucial point that we often miss. When I speak to a lot of my coaching clients about this, we are stuck in the two extremes, which is I have to finish it all, I have to do it all, it has to be perfect. Or if I don't push myself towards that, I'm kind of this like unreliable person that never finishes anything, and I don't want to be that person. But there's a middle ground here that is fundamentally you have a choice. You have a choice on what you do with these projects. And so I chose option 3. Here is a picture of it. I added WWMJD, what would Michael Jordan do? And I gifted it to her with a little note as it was. And I think, to be honest, it was even better because there was something quite amusing about giving her something as a source of motivation that I couldn't even quote unquote finish, that really had a message in itself, which is part of the video today. Sometimes the way to keep going is to let go of the things that you don't want to be doing anymore. Project Graveyard isn't evidence of failure, it's evidence of a brain that is wired to explore, to discover, to play and experiment and move towards things that feel alive and feel interesting. And ultimately, you get to decide what you choose to die and remain in the graveyard and what projects you want to perform a little CPR on. Because we love a metaphor. Okay, so here are my 3 tips to transform your project graveyard into a project garden, if you will. Somewhere where you can plant seeds, some of them will blossom and bloom, and others will just be left for future growth, a little bit of compost, if you will. Number 1, what was your original intention of the project? When it came to my cross-stitch project, all I was doing was following my excitement to create something for my sister as a source of inspiration. That didn't really define what that needed to look like, and so when I gifted it to her, it still achieved that original intention. Number 2, give yourself permission to let things go. Some things are meant to serve a certain purpose, and not all of your projects can serve all of those at once. It might be that the project was there to help you learn something, it might be that it was there to lead you onto something bigger or greater or different, or it might have just been there as a source of joy, which, by the way, is a completely valid intention in itself. You're allowed to do this stuff just because you enjoy it. Louder for the people at the back, please. And number 3, redefine what finished means for your brain. A little bit like my previous point, right? In this particular creative project that you're working on, if your intention is that you wanted to learn something and you've learned something, it doesn't matter that it's not finished. So what does finished mean for your brain? Is it that you want to learn something? Is it that you want to try something new? Is it that you want to practice moving through the bit where you normally kind of lose interest and try some strategies to keep going? Because trust me, ADHD perfectionism will have you always feeling like whatever you do isn't enough and that you need to keep going and it needs to be more finished. So you're kind of trapped because unless you set the boundary and define finished for yourself, whatever you do will never feel good enough. Learning to reframe my relationship with unfinished projects has honestly been one of the most impactful things for my self-esteem, how I feel about myself, how I talk to myself, and also, I was going to say counterintuitively, but kind of not counterintuitively, for my productivity. I do a lot more now, I enjoy a lot more now, but I also finish a lot more now because although there are very real barriers to ADHD creativity and completion of projects, I think we underestimate that a huge cloud that sits over those and that stops us from actually being able to overcome them is just feeling bad about ourselves and feeling shame that we couldn't do it. So if you can work on alleviating that, you can actually take the steps that you need to enjoy and finish the stuff that you want to. As you can tell, this is something I feel very strongly about. It's something I help my coaching clients to do. And I've actually launched a group program this year called Create Without Fear. I did it back with an amazing group in May, and I'm running it again on the 17th of September. It's called Create Without Fear, and it is to do really what I've been talking about today. So it's a small group of up to 8 people where there's validation and community of people that get your brain, and where I will be talking through ways that you can be creative, overcome perfectionism, deal with rejection sensitivity, and find joy again in creativity with some body doubling accountability as well. So if you are interested, check out the link in my description. We start 17th of September. Enrollment begins on the 1st of September, but you can join the waitlist in the link in the description below. So there you have it. Unfinished does not equal failure, and you have the control, the power to turn your ADHD project graveyard into a project garden. Tell me in the comments something in your graveyard/garden that you want to just release yourself and let go of. If you're interested in Create Without Fear, check out the link in my description for more details. Otherwise, you can keep watching my ADHD creative adventures in this playlist, which will appear, and I'll be adding much more to this over the coming weeks, because if you can tell, I'm in a creative zone.